On March 2nd, 2012, a silent and inexplicable anomaly occurred deep in the African savanna. Two herds of wild elephants, made up of dozens of enormous animals, suddenly stopped what they were doing. Thousands of kilometers from any human settlement, the herd leader raised her trunk, listened to the wind, and changed direction. They began to march. They were not searching for water. They were not fleeing from predators. There was no storm on the horizon, no rival herd encroaching on their territory. They were on a mission that traditional science, to this day, struggles to explain. A mission driven not by instinct, not by survival, but by something far more profound and far more ancient. Something that looks, undeniably, like love. For 12 uninterrupted hours, marching through the darkness of the African bush, these giants carved their way through towering acacia trees, across dry riverbeds, and through the kind of wilderness that swallows everything whole. Their destination? A small wooden cabin at the Thula Thula Private Game Reserve in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. The elephants had not visited that house in over a year. There had been no invitation, no signal, no trail of food leading them there. But on that specific day, in that specific hour, they knew, with a certainty that defies every rational explanation, that they needed to be there. They did not come to feed. They did not come out of curiosity. They came to mourn. On that very morning, the man who had saved their lives 13 years earlier, the man who had stood between them and a government-ordered execution, the man who had whispered to them through the electric fence in the dead of night, had just taken his last breath. How did they know? How did they sense his death from so many kilometers away, across rivers and grasslands and the thick, indifferent silence of the wild? This is the story of Lawrence Anthony, the elephant whisperer, and definitive proof that gratitude, memory, and love in the animal kingdom go far beyond anything humanity has ever dared to imagine. Stay with us until the end, because what these animals did when they finally reached that cabin will forever change the way you see the natural world, and perhaps the way you see yourself within it. To understand the full magnitude of this reunion and of this morning, we must travel back in time to the year 1999. The savannah is a place where the law of the strongest reigns supreme, where the circle of life turns without apology or sentimentality. But the greatest threat to wildlife does not have claws or fangs. It does not stalk through the long grass at dusk. The greatest threat carries a firearm, rides in a pickup truck, and operates with calculated, deliberate cruelty. Lawrence Anthony was a passionate conservationist, a man who had dedicated every beat of his heart and every rand in his bank account to preserving the Thula Thula Reserve. He was not a scientist in a laboratory. He was not a bureaucrat behind a desk. He was a man who lived in the dust and the heat and the wonder of the African wilderness. A man who believed with an almost stubborn conviction that every living creature deserved a chance. One afternoon, his phone rang with desperate news. It was a call from wildlife authorities delivering an ultimatum about a herd of 9 wild elephants, a matriarch, her family, and their collective shattered trauma. But these were no ordinary elephants. They had been labeled as problematic and dangerous beyond rehabilitation by every sanctuary and reserve that had encountered them. The history behind that label was heartbreaking. These elephants had witnessed unspeakable atrocities. They had watched members of their own family, mothers, calves, beloved elders, be hunted, killed, and mutilated by poachers. Elephants, unlike most animals, understand death. They recognize the bones of their dead. They return to the sites where loved ones fell. They mourn with the same devastating clarity that grief brings to a human family. And what this herd had experienced had not just broken their spirits, it had transformed them. The trauma had calcified into rage, into an all-consuming burning hatred for anything that walked on 2 legs. They had become masters of escape, dismantling electric fences with methodical intelligence, destroying property, and terrorizing nearby villages with a fury born not from aggression, but from profound, unprocessed loss. The government's order was clear, cold, and final. The 9 elephants would be euthanized. Every other reserve and sanctuary in the region had refused to take them. No one was willing to gamble their land, their staff, or their other animals on a herd of 5-ton trauma-driven giants that experts had unanimously declared impossible to rehabilitate. No one, except Lawrence. He knew that if he said no, the blood of that herd would be on his hands. He made the call. He bought the elephants, constructed a high-security fortified enclosure within Thula Thula, and waited for the trucks to arrive. But what he could not have fully prepared for was the sheer, overwhelming force of Nana, the matriarch, a creature who embodied every wound her herd had ever suffered, and who had decided with every fiber of her enormous being that she would not allow her family to be imprisoned again. When the elephants arrived at the reserve, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Nana was not simply agitated. She was operating at the absolute edge of her psychological endurance. She hated the enclosure. She hated the smell of diesel and humans in captivity. Every maternal instinct, every memory of loss, every scar that her history had carved into her soul told her to get her family out of that place at any cost. On the very first night, Nana and the herd launched a coordinated assault on the electric fence, using the raw, terrifying power of their bodies against the metal and current. The fence crackled, white sparks exploded into the darkness of the savanna, and the air filled with the acrid smell of electricity. But the metal held. Lawrence watched from a distance, his hands gripping the wheel of his Jeep, his mind calculating the odds. He knew elephants. He knew that their intelligence was not metaphorical, it was architectural. If Nana wanted to bring that fence down, she would find a way, a gap, a weak point, a moment of opportunity. And if the herd escaped beyond the reserve's boundaries, government rangers would be there at first light with rifles. There would be no second chances. Lawrence made a decision that night that every expert in his circle told him was suicidal. He put down the tranquilizer gun. He holstered his radio. He stepped out of the Jeep, walked slowly and deliberately across the dirt, and positioned himself at the fence, a thin wall of electrified wire between himself and nearly 50 tons of traumatized fury. Nana saw him immediately. She charged. She moved with a speed that seems impossible for an animal that size, her ears spread wide, her trunk swinging, the ground shaking beneath her feet. She stopped just meters from the fence, just meters from Lawrence, and the sound she produced was not a simple roar. It was a declaration, a warning carved from pure ancient authority. Move away, human, move away, or I will end you. Lawrence did not move. Instead, in the ringing silence that followed, he began to speak. His voice was low, unhurried, almost hypnotic. He spoke about the grass that grew thick and green beyond the camp. He spoke about the watering holes that would never run dry. He told her that no one here carried a weapon against her. He told her that her babies were safe. He told her his name. He told her over and over through the heat of that first night and through every night that followed. If you break through this fence, Nana, they will shoot you. They will kill your children. But if you stay, if you give this place a chance, I promise you, on everything that I am, that I will protect you. He came back the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Sometimes he sat in his Jeep and simply watched. Sometimes he stood at the fence for hours in the full blaze of the midday sun. Sometimes he was there at 2 a.m, talking softly into the darkness while the rest of the reserve slept. He kept no schedule that Nana could predict or dismiss. He was simply, consistently, stubbornly present. Weeks passed. The transformation was almost imperceptible at first. A slight easing of the tension in Nana's posture, a fraction less aggression in the angle of her head. Then one evening, something shifted. The trunk that had always risen to threaten him began to extend through the fence rails instead, cautiously, almost reluctantly, sniffing the air immediately around Lawrence's hand. And then came the day that Lawrence would describe for the rest of his life as one of the most extraordinary moments he had ever experienced. Nana walked to the fence, held his gaze for a long, searching moment, lowered her massive head, and allowed him to place his hand on her trunk. The war was over. Not because Lawrence had won, because they had both chosen to trust. Not long after, the fence came down. The herd was free to roam thousands of open hectares across Thula Thula, and from that day forward, they were not captive animals in a reserve. They were Lawrence's family. For 13 extraordinary years, an invisible but unbreakable bond flourished between Lawrence Anthony and the herd. He was not their keeper. He was not their trainer. He was their guardian, their trusted elder, their safe harbor in a world that had shown them nothing but cruelty before he arrived. The elephants roamed freely across the vastness of the reserve, sometimes disappearing for weeks into the deep interior. But Lawrence had a ritual. He would drive out into the bush, cut the engine, and wait in complete silence. And before long, from the shadows of the trees, enormous ears would begin to emerge. Nana would appear first, always. She would approach the jeep with a quiet, purposeful grace. The rest of the herd would follow. Mothers would nudge their newborn calves forward toward Lawrence, in a gesture so unmistakably intentional that even the most skeptical wildlife biologist who witnessed it found it difficult to dismiss. They were introducing him to the new generation. They were telling him, "You are part of this family. These young ones should know you." Science has long known that elephants are among the most emotionally complex animals on Earth. Their brains contain a highly developed hippocampus, the seat of memory and emotional processing, that is proportionally larger and more intricate than our own. They are one of only a handful of species that can recognize themselves in a mirror, demonstrating self-awareness that places them in rarefied cognitive company alongside great apes, dolphins, and humans. They hold funerals for their dead, returning to the bones of fallen companions and gently touching them with their trunks, sometimes standing in silence for hours. They comfort each other during distress with touch and sound. They carry their grief with them across decades. Lawrence understood this. He did not see the herd as animals he had tamed. He saw them as individuals, each with a distinct personality, a unique history, a rich interior life that deserved respect. And they, in turn, gave him something that very few humans are ever gifted: the unconditional trust of wild creatures who had every reason never to trust again. But time, as it always does, moved forward. As the years passed and the herd grew and multiplied and deepened their roots in the wild heart of the reserve, their visits to the main house became less frequent. Weeks turned into months between appearances. Lawrence watched from a distance, and what filled his chest was not loneliness but pride. This was exactly what was supposed to happen. They had healed. They had thrived. They had become, fully and completely, what they were always meant to be. His work, he believed, was done. Until March 2nd, 2012. Lawrence Anthony was away on a business trip, far from the red dust of Thula Thula, far from the sounds and smells of the bush he had made his life's work, when he suffered a sudden, massive heart attack. He died before he could return. He died before he could say goodbye. The world of conservation lost one of its most singular voices. His family lost a husband, a father, a man whose warmth and conviction had touched everyone who knew him. And the savannah lost something too. Something that cannot be measured in conservation statistics or protected hectares or surviving species counts. It lost the man who had chosen to believe in 9 elephants when the entire world had given up on them. No one knew how to carry that news into the bush. No one knew how to tell Nana. No one knew if she could even be found. But as it turned out, no one needed to say a word, because nature already knew. Remember where the elephants were on that morning. Not near the house, not near the main camp, not within easy reach of the place Lawrence called home. They had not set eyes on him in over a year and a half. They were hours deep in the remote wilderness of the reserve, grazing quietly, embedded in the rhythms of the wild, completely cut off from the human world and everything happening within it. And yet, on the exact day that Lawrence's heart stopped beating, not the day after, not the day the news was announced, not the day of the funeral, but that day, something stirred, without a signal, without a messenger, without any mechanism that science can currently identify or explain. 2 separate groups of elephants, Nana's herd and a second group led by a female named Frankie simultaneously stopped what they were doing. They oriented themselves, they formed a line, and they began to walk. Researchers have documented that elephants communicate across vast distances using infrasound, low-frequency rumbles below the threshold of human hearing, that travel not just through the air, but through the ground itself, detectable by the extraordinarily sensitive nerve endings in their feet. It is a language of vibration, ancient and precise, capable of carrying complex information across kilometers of terrain. But what vibration carries the news of a human death? What frequency travels through the earth when the heart of someone you love goes quiet forever? There is no scientific literature on that. There is no peer-reviewed paper that adequately accounts for what happened next. The two herds walked for 12 consecutive hours. They navigated rivers that had swollen with late summer rain. They moved past areas where lion prides were known to rest. They did not stop to graze. They did not stop to drink. The calves were tucked in the middle of the formation, surrounded by the adults, in the protective arrangement the herd uses when facing serious danger, as though this journey itself were something that required every instinct of collective care. And when the dawn broke over the horizon, Françoise Anthony, Lawrence's widow, heard something outside the cabin window, a sound, deep, rhythmic, unlike anything born of the ordinary morning. She opened the door, and the tears came before she could fully process what she was seeing. 21 elephants, the entire herd, standing in a loose, deliberate formation around the yard of the house. Some with their trunks lowered, some with their heads bowed slightly, all of them utterly, completely silent. There were no aggressive displays, no fence testing, no charging, none of the behavior that had once defined this herd in their darkest days. They stood with a stillness that felt ceremonial, weighted with intention, heavy with something that Françoise and every person who has heard this story since has struggled to call anything other than grief, because it was grief. Ethologists, scientists who study animal behavior, have documented elephant mourning rituals with increasing precision over the past 3 decades. When a herd elder dies, the family gathers. They touch the body. They stand in silence. They linger for hours, sometimes days, before finally moving on. The behavior the herd displayed in Lawrence's yard that morning was not metaphorical. It was not projection. It was, by every observable measure, identical to the mourning rituals they performed for their own. Lawrence Anthony was not a member of their species, but he was a member of their family, and they had come to honor him. They stayed for 2 full days. They did not eat. They did not leave to drink. In the brutal heat of a South African summer morning, 21 elephants stood vigil over a man who, 13 years before, had stood alone at a fence and refused to walk away from them. On the dawn of the 3rd day, as quietly and as purposefully as they had arrived, they turned. One by one, they walked back toward the tree line, back into the deep bush, and disappeared into the pale early morning mist. The yard was empty again. The silence they left behind was different from the silence before they came. It was the silence of something completed, something honored, something eternal. And if you believe that was the end of the story, consider this. In the years that followed, documented by the staff and the Anthony family at Thula Thula, the herd returned. Every year. On or around March 2nd, the anniversary of Lawrence's death, they make the same journey. The same 12 hours, the same vigil, the same silence. An elephant's memory does not only archive the location of watering holes and ancient migration paths, it archives love. It archives the people who chose them, and it never, ever lets go. Stories like that of Lawrence Anthony and Nana do not fit neatly inside the boundaries of what we have decided to call science. They challenge us. They unsettle us in the best possible way. They force us to confront the uncomfortable and magnificent possibility that consciousness, that awareness, that feeling, that capacity for deep and lasting connection is not the exclusive property of human beings. We have spent centuries constructing a story in which we sit at the top of a hierarchy, separate from and superior to the rest of the living world. But the elephants of Thula Thula walked 12 hours in darkness to stand at the door of a man they loved. They did not do it because someone told them to. They did not do it because it offered them any biological advantage. They did it because he had mattered to them, and because his absence left a space in the world that their ancient, grief-fluent hearts knew how to recognize. The man saved the animals from a death sentence. But in doing so, in choosing to stand at that fence and speak softly into the night instead of raising a gun, he saved something in himself too. He proved that the deepest and most enduring relationships are not built on dominance or control, but on patience, presence, and the willingness to be known. And you? Do you believe that animals carry grief the way we do? Do you believe there are forms of intelligence, of loyalty, of love that we have not yet found the words or the instruments to measure? What would you have done, standing at that fence in 1999, facing Nana's charge in the dark? If this story moved you, if it cracked something open in your chest and reminded you why the natural world is worth protecting, please share it. Let it reach someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to our channel and help us continue to tell the stories of those who cannot tell their own. Because here, every life carries weight. Every connection leaves a mark. And hope, always, is powered by the heart. Thank you for watching. Until our next journey into the wild.